The man had never expected his day to turn out like this. He had only meant to check the medical tent, drop off some supplies, and return to his post. But as he stepped inside, he saw her, the alien queen, seated on the edge of a small cot, leaning forward slightly, one hand pressed against her upper back. She was normally tall, imposing, and confident, but right now she looked tired, almost fragile. Her guards weren't with her, which itself was strange. They usually followed her like a shadow. He paused near the entrance, unsure if he should speak or turn back. She lifted her gaze toward him, and he realized she had noticed him long before he said a word. Her eyes, a deep shade of silver, watched him calmly, though he could see a hint of discomfort behind them. She told him she just needed someone to help clean a small wound on her back, nothing serious, she added. But the way she shifted her shoulder made it clear the pain was real. He glanced around, expecting another medic to step forward, but the tent was completely empty. Even the usual equipment was stacked strangely, as if someone had left in a hurry. He walked closer, keeping his movements slow so she wouldn't think he was nervous. But he was. She was not only a queen, she was the most respected figure among her people. Even the human soldiers tended to straighten up when she walked by. Standing close to her felt like walking next to someone who carried an entire world on their shoulders. When he reached her, she gently moved her hand away from her back. He noticed a faint mark, not bleeding, but irritated and sore. He told her he could help, though he warned her he wasn't an expert medic. She gave a small smile, the kind that looked rare for her, and said that would be enough. He found a clean cloth and a small bottle of antiseptic solution on the nearby table. As he poured a little of the liquid onto the cloth, he realized he had never touched an alien before. Not physically, not with this kind of closeness. He had spoken to them, assisted them, worked beside them. But this was different. This was personal. She shifted slightly so he could see the wound better. Her skin had a faint shimmer under the tense soft light, something he had only noticed from afar before. He told himself to focus, not let his hands shake. He didn't want to cause her more pain. When he pressed the cloth lightly against her back, she inhaled sharply but didn't move away. He apologized quietly, but she told him it was all right. Her voice was calm, steady, almost gentle. She even thanked him for helping her, something that surprised him more than the wound itself. As he cleaned the area, he tried to be as careful as possible. He expected her to be tense or impatient, but she stayed still, as if trusting him completely. That trust felt heavy, almost strange. He wasn't sure he deserved it. After a moment, she asked him how long he had been stationed here. He answered honestly, telling her it had been only a few months. She hummed softly, as if considering his words. He wasn't sure if she was making conversation or trying to distract herself from the discomfort. Then she told him something unexpected. She had dismissed her guards earlier because she didn't want them to worry. She didn't like showing them weakness. She didn't say it in a proud way, more like someone sharing a simple truth. He found himself speaking more freely than he thought he would. He told her everyone had limits, even leaders. She didn't respond immediately. Instead, her shoulders relaxed slightly, as if his words had let her breathe easier. While he worked, the tent stayed quiet, except for the soft sound of his movements. He didn't rush. He wanted to make sure he didn't miss anything. When he finally finished cleaning the last bit, he stepped back and told her gently that he was done. She turned slightly to face him, but instead of simply thanking him and leaving, she said something that made his breath catch. She said what he had done was something only her partner was allowed to do among her people. He thought he had misheard her. He blinked, confused, and asked her what she meant. Her expression was calm, almost serene. She explained that in her culture, Touching someone's back, especially caring for a wound, it was considered deeply personal. It was a gesture of trust and closeness, something reserved for those who held a special place in their lives. He felt warmth rise to his face as he tried to process her words. He apologized immediately, saying he hadn't known, that he hadn't meant to break any tradition or boundary. But she shook her head slowly. She said she had allowed it. She could have stopped him at any moment. Instead, she let him continue. She wasn't angry. She didn't look offended. If anything, she seemed thoughtful, as if she was studying him in a new way. He tried to lighten the mood by saying he was glad he hadn't done anything wrong. She gave him another small smile, warmer this time, and told him he had done everything right. He wasn't sure what to say after that. He didn't want to make things awkward. But she kept talking, as if she felt safe sharing pieces of herself. She told him the wound came from a training drill gone wrong. She had insisted on participating personally. Her advisors had warned her not to push herself too hard, but she never liked staying on the sidelines. She wanted to understand what her people went through. He listened quietly. He admired her more than he expected. She wasn't just a leader sitting on a throne. She actually worked beside her people, took risks, and made mistakes like anyone else. She stood up slowly, testing her shoulder with a gentle stretch. She said the pain was already lighter thanks to him. He told her he was glad he could help. Then she paused, studying him again with those calm silver eyes. She asked him why he didn't hesitate to help her. Most humans were still unsure around her people, worried about offending them or looking foolish. But he had stepped forward without a second thought. He explained honestly. He told her that pain was pain, no matter who felt it. If someone needed help, he didn't like to walk away. It wasn't deeper than that. It was just how he was raised. She didn't reply immediately, but her expression softened, as if his answer meant more to her than he realized. The tent flap moved slightly as a breeze slipped inside. She looked toward the entrance, then back at him. She told him she needed to return before her guards came searching, but she asked him quietly not to tell anyone about what she had said regarding her culture. Not because she was embarrassed, but because she didn't want rumors to spread or misunderstandings to form. He nodded without hesitation. Her trust felt like a heavy but meaningful responsibility. Before leaving, she stepped close enough that he could feel a faint warmth from her presence. She thanked him again, this time in a soft voice almost no one else would have heard. Then she stepped outside, her posture straight once again, her calm leadership returning like a familiar cloak. He watched the tent flap settle behind her. Part of him still felt stunned. He had cleaned a wound, expecting nothing more than a simple task. But instead, he had stepped into a tradition he didn't understand, earned a trust he never sought, and left the tent with questions he didn't know how to answer. He stayed there for a moment, letting everything sink in. He didn't know what her words meant for the future, or whether she had spoken them casually or with intention. But one thing stayed clear in his mind. Something had changed between them, not in a dramatic or obvious way, but in a quiet, strange, meaningful way that he couldn't quite explain. And as he finally stepped outside the tent, he wondered if she was thinking the same thing. The next morning began with an uneasy silence that hung in the air like a question no one wanted to ask. He woke early, before the base alarms, before the usual noise of workers and guards moving through the halls. His mind was still full of the moment from the night before, the moment when the alien queen had turned her head slightly and whispered those quiet, unexpected words that suggested he had crossed some invisible boundary he never meant to cross. He remembered how she had said, in a calm but almost emotional voice, that only her partner was allowed to touch that part of her back. At first, he had thought he heard her wrong. Then the weight of her words hit him, leaving him unsure whether he should feel honored, embarrassed, or simply confused. He sat on the edge of his small bunk, rubbing his hands through his hair. The room was cold, and the thin blanket still wrapped around his waist did little to help. He replayed everything from the start: the soldier who brought her in, the medic who asked him to assist, the moment he noticed her injury, and how carefully he had tried not to cause her any pain. He remembered the Queen's face calm, proud and strong, but with the smallest hint of exhaustion. She didn't show weakness easily. Even when she spoke those unexpected words, she didn't sound scared or shy. It was more like she was telling him a truth that held more meaning in her culture than he could understand. He finally stood up and splashed cold water on his face from the metal basin by the wall. Today, he told himself, would be normal. He would go to his assigned post, follow instructions, and keep his distance unless someone asked for his help. He didn't want to assume anything. He didn't want her to think he misunderstood her words or took them in the wrong way. But deep down, he knew the day wouldn't be normal. Nothing was normal when it involved her. When he stepped out into the hallway, the air smelled faintly of metal and warm circuits. Workers were preparing for the Queen's morning assessment. She had to report on her condition before returning to her diplomatic duties. A few guards nodded at him when he passed, though their eyes carried the same curious tension he felt inside himself. 2 of her personal guards stood near the entrance to her temporary chamber. They normally barely looked in his direction, but today they followed him with their eyes as he approached. There was no hostility, just something like recognition, as if they already knew about last night, even though he never said a word to anyone. One guard stepped slightly forward and spoke in a low, respectful tone. "She asked for you." He froze for a moment. "Me?" "Yes," the guard replied. "Only you." The words struck him harder than he expected. He wasn't sure why she wanted him specifically, and he wasn't sure what assumptions her people might be making. But he nodded politely and followed the guard inside. When he entered the room, the Queen was already awake. She stood near the tall window, where the morning light spilled across her silver-toned skin, making the gentle patterns on her back shine softly. She was wearing a new mantle that rested lightly along her shoulders, designed to avoid touching the wound. She didn't turn around immediately, but she sensed him there. Her voice was calm, almost too calm. "You came." He swallowed and stepped forward. "Your guard said you asked for me." "I did." She finally turned, and her eyes held that steady, unreadable expression she was known for among her people. "I want you to check the wound." He hesitated, not because he didn't want to help, but because her words from the night before lingered in his mind. "I don't want to disrespect your customs," he said quietly. "I didn't know about the rule." "I never meant—" "I know," she interrupted softly. Her tone wasn't harsh or offended. It was almost gentle. "You showed no disrespect. You acted with care, not intention." He felt some of the tension leave his shoulders, though not all of it. "Still, I should be careful," he said. "You already were." She stepped closer. "That is why I trust you." The room grew painfully still after she said that. Trust. It was not something she gave easily, not even to her own staff. He didn't know why he added, or whether he deserved it. But she clearly meant it. She turned her back to him and carefully lowered the top part of her new mantle, so the injured area was visible. The wound was healing well less red than the night before, the edges smoother, the swelling reduced. She must have been in pain when she fought off whatever had attacked her before arriving here. Yet she stood tall with no sign of weakness. He approached slowly with the medical kits someone had left nearby. The tools were simple clean cloth, healing gel, sterilizing wipes, but his hands felt heavier than they ever had before. He spoke softly, so she knew exactly what he was doing. "I'm applying the gel now. It might feel cold." "I remember," she replied. He tried not to smile at the way she said it. She remembered everything. She remembered the pressure of his hand, the moment he shook with nervousness, the way he tried to hide how worried he was that he might hurt her. She remembered his care dot as he worked, her shoulders relaxed slightly. Not in a dramatic way, just enough that he could tell she trusted him fully in that moment. Her breathing slowed, and she didn't flinch even once. After a while, she spoke again. "Your touch is careful. You think before you act. Many in my court do not." He wasn't sure how to respond to that. "I just don't want to cause pain." "That alone makes you different," she said. He gently cleaned the last traces of dried medical paste from the surrounding area before stepping back. "The work was done. The wound is healing well," he said. "You should be fine if you avoid heavy movement for another day." She adjusted her mantle again and turned to face him. "Thank you." "You don't need to thank me," he said, shaking his head. "I'm just doing my job." "No," she replied firmly. "You are doing more than that." He felt warmth rush into his chest. Not romantic, not dramatic, just something real. Something he didn't want to ignore. Before he could respond, one of her advisors entered the room. The advisor bowed quickly. "Your meeting with the base commander begins in 15 minutes. The Queen nodded. "Prepare the documents." "I will attend." Then she turned to him. "Will you walk with me?" He blinked. "You want me with you?" "Yes," she said simply. "Your presence is steady." He didn't know what that meant exactly, but he walked beside her as she moved through the metallic hallway. Soldiers, engineers, and workers stepped aside respectfully. Some stared. Some whispered. The Queen rarely walked with anyone except her own guards, and definitely not with a simple worker from the human side. He kept his eyes forward and didn't react, but he could feel the curious looks following them down the corridor. When they reached the conference room, she paused. She turned toward him, and for the first time, he realized she looked slightly nervous, not afraid, but aware of something important. "You healed a part of me," she said quietly. "Not everyone understands the meaning of that. My people may look at you differently now." He swallowed hard. "Differently how?" "With respect," she said. "And questions." He didn't know what those questions might be, but he knew one thing. Yesterday he was just a maintenance worker, helping a wounded diplomat. Today things felt different, bigger, more complicated, and somehow more connected than he expected. She placed a hand briefly on his arm, a gesture that felt natural but carried weight in her culture. "I will speak with you after the meeting," she said. "I'll be here," he replied. She entered the room, and the doors closed behind her, leaving him outside with a strange mix of fear, hope, and curiosity swirling in his chest. He had tended a wound, and in doing so, he had stepped into a place in her world that he never meant to enter, but now he wasn't sure he wanted to leave. He woke earlier than usual the next morning, though he had barely slept. His mind kept replaying the moment from the previous night, when the Queen had said those unexpected words in that calm, steady voice. She had said he was the only one she trusted. She had said the act he had done cleaning her wound was something only a partner was allowed to do in her culture. Even though she had not accused him of anything, and even though her tone had been almost soft, it still left a strange weight on his chest. He wasn't sure if it was fear, confusion, or something else entirely. He sat on the edge of his small bed, rubbed his face, and tried to breathe normally. The room was quiet, except for the low hum of the ship's engines. The ship was large, but his cabin was simple, just a bed, a small shelf, and a chair. He liked it that way. It made him feel grounded, especially when everything around him felt too big, too strange, too important. After a few moments, he stood, washed his face, and prepared himself. The Queen's advisors had sent a message earlier that morning, asking for updates on her wound care. He knew they would want him to check on her again. A part of him hoped they had assigned another medic. But they hadn't. They specifically asked for him. He couldn't decide if that made things better or worse. As he walked through the ship's long corridor, he felt the eyes of a few alien attendants silently follow him. Some were curious, some confused, and some looked like they were trying to figure out what exactly his role had become. It wasn't surprising. Word traveled fast among the Queen's court, and last night's event probably seemed strange from their cultural point of view. He tried not to pay attention. He kept his focus ahead and made his way toward the Queen's private medical room. When he reached the door, he stopped for a second. He gently touched the panel, and it slid open with a soft sound. The air inside the room was warm, with a faint scent of some herbal medicine the aliens used. The Queen was awake, sitting on a raised seat that looked like a mix between a chair and a medical bed. A few soft lights were positioned around her, casting a calm glow. She looked up when he entered. Her expression wasn't cold, but it wasn't unreadable either. It was something in between measured, aware, and strangely gentle. "You arrived early," she said, her voice steady. "I thought it was better," he replied quietly. She nodded once and shifted slightly, careful of her injury. He approached slowly, out of respect and caution. Even though he had treated many patients before, treating someone like her, someone with both power and a completely different culture, required a different kind of sensitivity. One of her guards stood in the corner, watching silently. But something about the way he stood felt different today. Less tense. Almost like he was observing out of curiosity rather than suspicion. The Queen moved her arm slightly, giving him space to check the wound again. "You may look," she said. He took a soft cloth from the small tray on the counter, then stepped behind her. Her back was partially exposed, but only the area needed for treatment. Her wound already looked a little better compared to the night before. The swelling had gone down, and the edges looked clean. "I'm going to be gentle," he said softly. "I know," she replied. Her voice wasn't cold this time. It had a quiet tone he hadn't heard before. A tone that made him more nervous than anything else. As he cleaned around the wound, she remained still. He tried to focus only on the task-steady hands, slow movements, careful cleaning. But his mind kept drifting back to her words. Only a partner is allowed to do this. He had thought about asking her what exactly that meant, but something held him back. Maybe it wasn't the right moment. Maybe he wasn't ready to hear the explanation. After a few minutes, she spoke again. "You were troubled last night." He hesitated. His hands paused for a second before he continued, gently wiping. "I wasn't sure what to say." He answered honestly. "You believed I accused you," she said. He didn't respond. But she was right. "You did not offend me," she continued. "You followed your own customs. You helped because you felt it was right. That is why I allowed it." He exhaled slowly. He didn't realize how much tension he had been holding. "Thank you," he said. "There is nothing to thank me for," she replied. "I simply wished to clarify what I said." He wasn't sure if she realized it, but the clarification mattered more to him than she might have guessed. He changed the bandage carefully and secured it in place. When he stepped back, she adjusted her clothing with slow, controlled movements. "You work with patience," she said. "Most people rush." "I try not to rush," he replied softly. "It makes things worse." Her eyes met his for a brief moment. There was something in them that felt thoughtful, observing him, but not in a harsh way. More like she was trying to understand him, the same way he was trying to understand her. "Eh?" Soft chime sounded her advisor requesting entry. The Queen permitted it, and the advisor entered with a tablet-like device, glancing at him before speaking. "Your schedule for today requires rest," the advisor told the Queen. But there is a council meeting soon. They want an update on the incident. The Queen's expression hardened slightly, not at him, but at the mention of the council. They will have to wait, she said calmly. The advisor hesitated. They are requesting. My answer is the same. Her tone didn't rise. She didn't sound angry, but the firmness in her voice left no room for argument. The advisor bowed lightly and left. He tried to stay neutral, but it was clear the Queen valued her independence more than any council request. She looked back at him. People often forget that recovery cannot be rushed. He nodded. Everyone tries to work too fast. Except you, she said. The simple statement made him look away for a moment. He focused on cleaning up the tray, trying to ignore the warmth creeping into his face. When he finished, he stepped back. If you need anything later, you can call me. I will, she answered. He left the room quietly, but as soon as the door closed behind him, he exhaled through his nose and leaned gently against the wall. He didn't know why he was so nervous. He had talked to her twice now without anything going wrong. She hadn't been upset. She hadn't found fault in him. She had even reassured him. But still, there was something about her presence that filled the air, something calm yet powerful, something that made him feel like he was walking through a fog of emotions. He didn't yet understand as he walked down the hallway. 2 alien attendants approached him slowly, their expressions curious. You treated the Queen again? One asked. Yes, he replied simply. She allowed it? The other asked, sounding almost surprised. He nodded. The two exchanged a look, then nodded respectfully to him and walked away. It wasn't rude. It was more like they were adjusting their understanding of him. That made his stomach tighten again. Was he becoming important? Or was he becoming the center of some misunderstanding in their culture? He didn't want either. He only wanted to do his job. Later that day, he received a message from one of the Queen's advisors requesting a brief talk. He made his way to a small meeting chamber where the advisor waited. The advisor stood tall, hands clasped behind his back in a formal posture. You treated the Queen twice, the advisor said. We appreciate your care, but we must understand something important. He nodded carefully. What do you need to know? In your culture, the advisor asked, is it normal for such close contact between a healer and a leader? He tried not to react too strongly. In my culture, helping someone who is hurt is normal, he explained. It doesn't mean anything more. The advisor listened with interest. In our culture, the advisor said slowly, such contact is considered deeply personal. Only a trusted partner or companion is allowed to tend to a wound on the back. He swallowed. He had figured out that much, but hearing it from someone else made it feel heavier. I didn't know, he said honestly. If I had known, I would have asked someone else to help. The advisor studied him carefully, as if trying to understand whether he was telling the truth. After a long pause, the advisor nodded. The Queen does not allow others to touch her injuries, the advisor said. Not even us. Yet she allowed you. It seems she understands your intentions. He didn't know how to respond. Thankfully, the advisor didn't expect a reply. Only ask that you continue to act with the same respect. The advisor said, I will, he answered. Softly. The advisor nodded again and dismissed. Him got as he walked back to his cabin. His thoughts raced. It was becoming clearer now. He had stepped into something deeper than simple medical care. Whether he wanted it or not, the Queen had placed a kind of trust in him, something meaningful in her world, something rare. He didn't know what it meant for his future. He didn't know if it would cause problems, or change things, or create expectations he wasn't ready for. But he knew one thing with certainty. He couldn't ignore the bond forming between them. Not anymore, and neither could she. When the final morning arrived, the atmosphere inside the Queen's medical chamber felt different from all the earlier days. It was calmer, quieter, almost like the room itself understood that something important was about to happen. The man woke up early, long before the palace servants began their routines. He hadn't slept much. His mind had been full half of it worrying about the queen, and the other half trying to understand what the last few days had meant. He didn't know how deeply his presence had affected her. He only knew that whenever she looked at him, something warm stirred in his chest, something he didn't want to lose. When he stepped into the queen's chamber, she was already awake. She was standing near the balcony, her back facing him, her long silver cloak flowing gently behind her. The wound he had been carefully cleaning for days was almost healed now. It no longer looked painful, and her movements were smoother. But something still felt heavy around her, something that had nothing to do with injury. She turned when she heard his footsteps, and the expression on her face wasn't what he expected. It wasn't joy or relief. It was something soft, something uncertain. "You came early today," she said quietly. "I couldn't sleep," he replied honestly. She nodded, as if she understood the real meaning behind his words. "Neither could I." He walked nearer, but not too near. He didn't want to push the moment or crowd her. Something about her energy told him to go slow. She didn't seem like the powerful ruler the galaxy feared. She looked more like someone who was trying to prepare for something painful. When he checked the wound, she stood still and silent. Earlier, she always talked, sometimes teasing him, sometimes thanking him, sometimes questioning him about human life. But today she didn't speak at all. He gently placed the warm cloth against her back, careful not to cause discomfort. She didn't wince. The pain was almost gone, yet she closed her eyes, as if trying to hold on to something that was slipping away. He noticed her breathing slow, and he paused. "Are you all right?" Her voice was soft when she answered. "The wound is healing. That part is fine." It wasn't really an answer, and he knew it. He continued cleaning, slow and gentle, giving her space to speak when she was ready. After a few minutes, she finally whispered, "When this treatment ends, your duty will be over." His hands froze for a moment, just a second, before he made them continue working. "Yes," he said in a quiet tone. "And you will leave the palace," she added, still not looking at him. He swallowed. "If that is what I'm supposed to do, then yes." Her shoulders lowered slightly, almost like those words had hit her. He waited, letting the silence settle between them. Something in him didn't want to leave, not yet, not like this. He didn't know if he should say it out loud, but the thought pressed harder and harder inside him. "I didn't stay here because I had no choice," he said slowly. "I stayed because I wanted to help you." The queen turned her head slightly, not enough for him to see her whole face, but enough for him to notice the shine in her eyes. "Nobody helps royalty just because they want to," she said, her voice thin. "People help because they seek favor or reward. I'm not seeking anything." He paused. "Except that you stay safe." The queen inhaled deeply, her voice trembling, though she tried to control it. "I don't know why that matters to you." He put the cloth aside, his task almost complete. "Maybe because you trusted me. Maybe because you let me stand close when you were hurting. Maybe because you treated me like someone who mattered." The queen's eyes widened slightly, and she turned fully to face him now. Her cloak shifted, revealing the healed line across her back. She didn't cover it. She didn't hide it. She looked at him with an honesty she rarely showed anyone. "You mattered," she said softly. "More than I intended." He didn't know how to respond at first. The words reached deeper than anything she had said before. They felt real, unguarded, like she had opened a door she usually kept tightly locked. "What happens now?" he finally asked. She breathed out slowly, almost shakily. "I don't want you to leave." He felt something warm spread through him. Then tell me to stay. The queen let her gaze drop for a moment, as if thinking carefully. If I tell you to stay, it won't be as a guard, or a healer, or a palace worker. You know that, don't you? He nodded. He understood exactly what she meant. Her voice lowered even more. Only a partner is allowed to touch a queen's bare back. She paused. I told you that on the first day. I didn't expect it would become real. His heart pounded in his chest. He remembered that moment well. She had said it half jokingly back then, half teasingly. But now, the meaning was completely different. He stepped closer, just enough that if she wanted to step away, she could. She didn't. I didn't touch your wound because I wanted to claim anything, he said. I did it because you needed someone you could trust. I know, she whispered. That's the problem. He frowned slightly, confused. Why is that a problem? Because I don't want to let you go now, she admitted. And I'm not supposed to feel that. Why not? Because I am queen, she said, almost like she was reminding herself. And you are. She paused. You are someone I should not depend on. He took a slow breath. But you do. The queen blinked, her eyes shining. Yes. The quiet in the room felt thick, heavy with emotion neither of them had fully understood until now. He gently lifted the edges of the healing wrap on her back. Your wound is almost healed, he said. Tomorrow you won't need me to clean it anymore. Then today is the last day, she whispered. Maybe not, he said softly. She looked up, her voice barely audible. What do you mean? Maybe I can stay, he replied. If that's what you want. The queen's lips parted slightly. Hope flickered across her expression, delicate and cautious. I do want that. But I don't want you to stay because you feel obligated. I'm not obligated, he said firmly. I'm choosing this. She didn't speak for several seconds. She just watched him like she was searching his face for any sign of hesitation. When she found none, her posture softened. You changed everything, she whispered. So did you, he answered. She took a slow step toward him, closing the space between them. They stood close enough now that he could see the details in her bright eyes, the strength, the vulnerability, the fear, the hope. All of it mixed together. Her voice was steady when she finally spoke, even though her hands trembled slightly. If you stay, that means you accept the role beside me. I accept, he said without hesitation. Her breath caught. I accept because it feels right, he added. Because it feels like where I'm meant to be. The queen slowly reached out, placing her hand against his chest, not as a test this time, not as a warning, but as something gentle, almost protective. I've never chosen anyone, she said. Not like this. You're not choosing alone, he replied. I'm choosing too. For the first time since he met her, the queen allowed herself to smile soft, real, almost relieved. It wasn't the royal, practiced smile she used in public. It was something quiet and personal. When she stepped closer and rested her forehead lightly against his, the moment felt like an answer to all the unspoken questions between them. It wasn't dramatic or loud. It was simply two people admitting something that had grown slowly, honestly, and naturally. After a long time, she whispered, then stay. Stay beside me. I will, he said. And he meant every word. The room felt warmer. Her shoulders relaxed. The tension that had filled the air since morning slowly faded away. The future was uncertain. There would be challenges, questions, and responsibilities, but for the first time, neither of them felt afraid of facing them. They weren't alone anymore. That evening, the palace felt different. The halls didn't feel cold, the silence didn't feel heavy, and even the distant lights of the galaxy outside the balcony seemed brighter. The queen stood beside him, not as a ruler giving commands, but as someone whose heart had finally found a place to rest. She looked at him once more before the day ended. All of this, began because you cleaned a wound. He smiled softly. Sometimes the smallest things change everything. And you changed mine, she whispered. And you changed mine, he said back. And just like that, the story of a human and a queen, two completely different beings from two different worlds, found its gentle, honest, and hopeful beginning, not an ending, a beginning.